You know who I like? I like Josh Pate. And I really like him after he ranks Alabama in his top 4 for the upcoming season.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Can't wait to tell you about Monarch Money later on in this broadcast. Want to thank you every day for being here every day. Thank you newbies for being here today. And thanks everybody for making us your first listen every single day. Jimmy, Josh Pate, known college football extraordinaire, has come out with his top 10 for next season. And I like it. I like it a lot. I'm looking at it, and he's got – look, I don't think anybody's going to challenge some of the people he has. But I guess we'll start with Alabama at 4, which I think is fantastic. He does have Clemson at 1. And, you know, on the surface, you feel like, okay, that may be a bit high. But when you think about they bring back Cade Klubnik, they have 2 dudes on the defensive line that are projected to go in the top 10, top 15 of the NFL draft. And their schedule outside of hosting LSU to start the season is incredibly manageable. All of a sudden you're like, okay, that makes some sense, right?
Yeah, I don't dispute Clemson at number 1. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's fair. That's also a national championship winning coach. It's not like he hadn't done it before. He's actually done it twice. They're in a league where they have a schedule that I think if you're going to pencil anyone into the playoff today, you start with Clemson. And in part because of who they play, and you know they have the returning quarterback. They have the best wide receiver room they've had in years. They have All-American candidates at every level of the defense, defensive line, linebacker, and even DB. This is a pretty loaded Clemson team. They also brought in Tom Allen to be the new DC. The Riley guy's been around for a while at offensive coordinator now, Garrett Riley. I think Clemson at number 1 is fair. I wouldn't put them there because Clemson in the last few years hasn't shown to me that they can beat 2 or 3 elite teams in a row like they would have to do to win the national championship. So I wouldn't project them to win the national championship, but I think it's fair to put them at number 1 or certainly in the top 2 or 3 based on what they're returning.
Okay, and then here's the one that I think everybody's going to have way up there, including you, if I remember right, and that's Texas, okay? Yeah. The one thing I look about Texas, when you've got a schedule that includes at Ohio State, at Georgia, and at Florida. Now, the Florida one, you're like, oh, what's the big deal? Florida really came on. They got DJ Lagway, and you want to talk about a team that's going to be hungry to beat a good team. Florida's going to be that. Now they go to Kentucky and go to Mississippi State and they have Vanderbilt and Arkansas in there too. So it's not exactly murderer's row, but those 3 games alone, look, Texas is going to make the playoffs. I don't see any way they don't. But when you're starting off at Ohio State, you go to Florida a few weeks after that, and then you ultimately go to Georgia in mid-November. I don't know. I think having them at 2 is a bit of a stretch, but the number 3 team they have for me is one that, you know, I've been telling people, hey, why are y'all so high on them? And then I look at their schedule and I go, oh, I get it now. Penn State, nobody in the non-con that's worth a lick. I'm trying to think of the right words to say that can be said. They do host Oregon. They're at Ohio State, and they'll lose that game because they always lose that game. But that's going to be their loss. Now, they're also at Iowa. I guess that's scary, I guess. But and then, of course, you come to Bama. And the one thing that I think if I weren't a Bama fan, I would look at Bama's schedule and go, man, that's too high for Bama too. But I think Josh Pate is a very knowledgeable dude. And I think Josh Pate is looking at what Alabama has and going, y'all are selling them short. Y'all have devalued Alabama too much because of the loss of Nick Saban. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think that's I like Josh's Alabama takes for a guy who's not an Alabama fan or an Alabama guy. He knows Alabama's program as well as any national guy out there. Probably helps that he's engaged to a girl that used to work for Alabama. I'm sure that's part of it. But Josh is just a very knowledgeable about a lot of programs, really. But no, Josh knows Alabama well. Part of me, on the one hand, I agree with Josh about where he's put Alabama. I do, because I do think people are underrating Alabama nationally based on what happened last year. I think Alabama's a little underrated, but I'm more comfortable actually right now with Alabama further back, just because I want to not sneak up on people. Alabama, not with the brand, isn't sneaking up on anybody, but I think the disrespect is something that fuels the guys. So I almost wish we were further back, but I do like that Josh has recognized, hey, don't be fooled by the losses to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma last year. This team was really close. We pointed out last week on this show, Luke, that the 24 team actually scored just as many points and accumulated just as many yards and were just as good defensively as the 2023 team that won the SEC and pushed the national champs to overtime. It was just some turnovers, and that's what they've got to address this year. You've got to turn over the ball less, and I think Alabama can have the kind of season that Josh Pate says they're going to have.
Yeah, you talk about going off on a whole podcast about turnovers. We should do that one day. Like, have a
11 to 21 are the exact numbers. 11 turnovers in 23, which is a fantastic number, by the way. 21 turnovers a year later. And
when you think about Vandy, the pick six early in the game sort of turned the game on its head. You think about Oklahoma, 2 interceptions, and especially one with a very poor attempt at a tackle by Jalen Milroe, sort of knocking any of the spirit out of the team. Those 3 turnovers in particular, boy, it's a different animal. But, of course, they did happen. But we should do a segment one day. Like, what turnover do you remember the most, either created by Alabama or that Alabama had against themselves? What was the most famous touchdown you remember? What was the most famous, run you remember? So we could do that. That's not a bad idea. But going back to Josh Pate for a second and all of this, I just want to round out his top 10. Mm-hmm. He's got LSU at 5. That's the team, to me, that a lot of people are really high on. And I'm Missouri. Show me. They got to go to Clemson. They got to come to Bama. They got to go to Ole Miss. They got Florida. They've got a tough road to hoe, if you ask me. Then Notre Dame, which, okay, I can buy that. Oregon, I can buy that. Ohio State at 8 seems low. Florida at 9 seems high, and Oklahoma at 10 seems, what in the world is happening?
Well, Josh specifically mentioned on his show that about Florida and Oklahoma's schedule, that this is a ranking of how good teams are, but then some teams in that top 10 have tougher schedules than others, and that's ultimately going to be reflected in the win-loss thing. And he did mention how he doesn't, Florida and Oklahoma might have too many losses to finish in the top 10 just based on who they play. Florida and Oklahoma's schedule are particularly brutal. And that's going to hurt them. Whereas someone like a Clemson and a Penn State, I think, get a little helped. Even Texas, to an extent, gets helped, in terms of their schedule. How about the absence of the Georgia Bulldogs? Absence of the Georgia Bulldogs. I think, what I think that is? An overreaction to Gunnar Stockton. I think people are not sleeping on Gunnar, but the thing is, Gunnar hasn't looked spectacular. He hasn't looked great. And that's why he's not in Josh Pate's top 10. Let's remember, Gunnar Stockton was the quarterback that beat Texas and won the SEC championship. So I don't underestimate or underrate Gunnar myself. Now he's had a whole year with getting number 1 reps. I don't think he's going to be terrible. I'll be surprised if he is.
Yeah, if you're going to praise him for some of these guys being up there and be like, oh, good, you got to sort of say, leaving Georgia off and putting Oklahoma in. If he just puts Georgia in that 10 slot, I think everybody's like, this actually, we can talk ourselves into this. But you put Georgia out and you put Oklahoma at 10, and I'm like, what's happening?
If Georgia and Oklahoma are playing next week on a neutral field, Georgia versus Oklahoma, Miami, Florida, next week, I like Georgia by 10, maybe 14.
At least. But he does love John Mateer, I think. So
he does. He likes Mateer and bringing the OC. It's not just that Oklahoma's getting John Mateer; it's that they're bringing Arbuckle too, the Washington State offense coordinator. So Mateer has some, and boy, what a confident kid! I saw a recent interview with him, and I don't know. Chipper Jones had a term one time that I really like, and I do think he says the greats, or if you're really good at a high level, there is a necessary arrogance. That's what a necessary arrogance. I like that. But boy, it's a fine line, isn't it? Isn't it a fine line between necessary arrogance and one more step too far? And then it's like, good Lord, you're poop smell too, man. Well, it's not. Don't be like that. I'm not saying Mateer's like that. I'm saying no. He's at that necessary arrogance. I mean, he has a lot of confidence in his game, and I think that's great. Just don't go too far with it.
If you want to see where the line is crossed, you look no further than the Tennessee baseball team.
That's an unlike. I mean, I've said that for years under Vitello, who, by the way, any Tennessee fans listening, and I don't know why you would. Vitello's a great coach. He's great. He's great. He's elite. He might be the best coach in college baseball, but the team takes on the personality of their coach, and it's sort of an unlikable bunch from afar. Tennessee fans shouldn't care. They're like, we're winning, and we won the national championship, and we're going to win it again. Fine. That's fine. And I'm not saying they're cheating or they're terrible or evil. I'm just saying they're not a very likable bunch under Vitello.
Man, I'm excited to tell y'all about Monarch Money. I love Monarch Money. I do. I use it myself. And if you ever checked your bank account and if you wondered, hey, where'd all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. It really is. You know this. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It really isn't. I use it myself. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And Lord knows we all need to do that. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. That is such a big deal for somebody like me who's got 73 kids. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. It's all one word, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. You can beat egg, you can beat a bush. You can't beat Monarch Money.
73 kids. It's like you're running your own. It's like you're running your own personal sperm bank over there.
I'm very active, Jimmy. All right, real quick recruiting note before we get into
Phillip Rivers is like, holy moly.
Before we get into your roster countdown, Lasiah Jackson, four-star defensive back from Lee County in Georgia. He is being visited by Alabama today. I know you're
serious step. That's a serious step. That's beyond the first date, isn't it?
It is. Well, and look.
It's meeting the parents.
Being a defensive back or
meeting the parents literally.
Being a defensive back or a tight end in recruiting for Alabama is like a woman with beautiful eyes. I mean, we just can't look away. And if you need to substitute something for eyes, go ahead. But I chose eyes. And I mean, we just can't stop staring. And we love us a defensive back. And we are visiting another one today.
There's a ton of them. I watch a lot of like, for instance, I'm going to watch some huddle this week of some local teams that I've missed a lot. I don't get to see a lot of the 1A and 2A teams. So I watch a lot of huddle for 1A and 2A teams in my area. And you know what? The thing is, when you're just pulling up a team and you're watching a team because you're looking for prospects, right? Because I just enjoy doing that because I'm a nerd. So I enjoy doing that. Well, here's the thing. It always starts with size. When you're looking for SEC prospects, it starts with size. And the fact of the matter is 1A and 2A teams rarely have defensive linemen who are 6'4" and 285 pounds. They just don't really have that guy in general. But you know what they all have? 5'10", 180-pound DBs. All of them. And so that's why evaluating DBs is sort of tough in that way, because there's so many out there that fit a size profile. Then you have to watch them play. I mean, it's easy when, like the other day, I'm watching Saraland. Saraland's got another, as to quote Nick Saban, they've crapped out another one. Saraland has a 2028 defensive end, 2028 Keani Snopes, which is a cool name. Keani Snopes. Keani Snipes.
I was about to say,
brand new.
Snopes, that thing you use to debunk.
Yeah, that's right. See, Snope sounds like, see, he's lying. Snope, not true. Correct. Wasn't true. It's Snipes. Some of that. He 6'5", 235, class of 28 at Saraland, offered by Auburn this week. I watched the tape about 10 days ago, and it's like they've crapped out another one.
Can you imagine being that young and that big? People just come to school and like, here, just don't do it. Here's my lunch money. Just leave me alone. But so Lasiah Jackson,
Saraland, apparently he's just another kid.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the defensive back recruiting in Alabama is you and I kind of make fun of, we're after all these defensive backs, but none of them are not awesome. I mean, the ones we already have committed, Zion Gibson and Jordan Edmonds, are
elite.
both high 4, 5-star guys.
Elite. Then
you've got we're in the mix for Brandon Arrington, Jet Washington, Jariah Edwards, Trey Bell, and Elbert Hill. Bell and Hill are committed to FSU and USC respectively, and now we're looking at Lasiah Jackson, who is top 150 universally. It's not like we're taking a flyer on any defensive backs. All our defensive backs that we're recruiting are stars.
And we would have guessed, we talked about this before on the show. It's so true. You'd have guessed losing Nick Saban, the ultimate DB guru, where you had every elite DB in the nation. Like, I want to play for Nick Saban because you're not only getting the greatest head coach of all time, you're getting one of the greatest defensive back coaches of all time. And he literally coaches the DBs at practice. So you're getting in good with the head coach, right? Our DB recruiting has not fallen off, losing Nick. And total credit goes to multiple people, starting with Courtney Morgan, including Kalen DeBoer, but in particular, Mo Linguist, who just hits it out of the park out there.
I mean, the guy knows what he's doing, and it's pretty amazing.
He's married to a lawyer, so there you have it. He's as smart as my wife.
I like that. I like that a lot. Just, you know what? Because we are running short on time here, I'm going to talk about a couple other things. First of all, here's one thing that's interesting about offensive lineman Alabama's looking at, and this is courtesy of BOL. Wilson Zierer, he had a brother that was at Auburn, and he's gone now, but of course Auburn's looking at him too. This is a highly recruited kid, 4-star or 3-star out of Rabun Gap.
Yep.
And, Zier's already visited once. This was just an interesting side note from BOL that he's
teammate of Marshall Pritchett, by the way.
He's got an official visit set for June 13th. I'm not sure how big that date is. I know Alabama's got some bigger dates, and it didn't seem like the visit was going to happen because Zierer wants to become a pilot and UA doesn't offer a flying school pilot thing. So, but he said the visit is still on track. So, my thing is, hey, you can learn to be a pilot at Delta. Why don't you come over here and play football for a little bit?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't have to, I don't believe you have to major in piloting to be a pilot. I don't think you don't have to do that. And Tuscaloosa does have an airport that's like 9 minutes from the campus where they literally do flying lessons and teach you can learn to fly there in Tuscaloosa. But apparently Tennessee, which is a favorite for him, has a literal, like, you can major in piloting a commercial airline or something.
At the rate I've seen planes crashing lately, I'm not sure I'd brag that I have a flying school right now.
Yeah. What did Josh Dobbs majored in something at Tennessee, like
aerospace?
Aerospace. I knew it had something to do with not being on the ground.
All right, let's get into your roster ranking countdown.
Isn't this fun? Isn't this fun? Because this is one of the fun things for me here is of the many fun things about it is not only the ranking itself, which is fun to put together and talking about these kids, but it's one day closer. Every year, one day. Now we're just 80 days from what I consider the start of the football season, just 80 days. Micah Debose today, one of mine and Luke's favorites. Micah Debose from Viger High School in Pritchard. I think he played his senior year at Theodore High School under Steve Mask. You know, I like Debose a ton. And I know here I am using the word project when I don't want to use the word project. I only mean it in this sense. It's going to take a minute with him. I think it's going to take a minute because here's a kid that's going to have to work on his body. And we talked about how at the bottom of the rankings, all we're doing is discussing kids that are likely to redshirt. And when you say kids that are on the team likely to redshirt, don't you always start with the offensive line? And I mean, we started, the countdown. Debose is actually number 80, not at the bottom. But you start with the offensive line because they're the most obvious redshirt candidates. And I would put Debose on that list of a guy who's very likely to redshirt in the sense that, A, he's not going to be a first-team guy. He doesn't even appear to be a second-team guy for right now. So he doesn't need to play. And then third, he's a freshman that's going to play on the line of scrimmage in the SEC that needs to work on his body and his strength and his quickness. And there's every reason in the world that a redshirt year here would be hugely beneficial. Plus, with the modern rules, Luke, he can play in 4 games and actually get his feet wet a little bit, playing in games, garbage time. I think you'll see that with Micah. I'm sky high on him. Just like I said about the guys yesterday, it's not going to shock me if this guy is a 2 in 2026 in his redshirt freshman year, that he's a second team offensive guard in year 2 would not surprise me in the least. I think he's a future starter. The only negative thing to say, and it's not even a negative thing at all, is it's just going to take a minute with this guy. Because I think, again, he's got to work on his body. He's got to look the part of an NFL offensive lineman before he's ready to be a starter in the SEC. I like Micah Debose a ton. I think he was overrated in the recruiting process very early and then ended the recruiting process a little underrated. And I do think that he's got a good chance to be a multi-year starter at Alabama down the road at offensive guard. Tough kid, wants to be good, good athlete for a guy who projects as a guard. And I think that's why the big schools wanted it. Look who wanted him, Luke. Georgia wanted him at one point. I think he's committed there at one point.
He was committed to Georgia.
Ohio State is who we had to beat to get him. I mean, how can you be ranked low when Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State want you to play at the line of scrimmage? I mean, he should have just been ranked higher.
Yeah, I think that he just started out being so hyped. Like ESPN had him way up there, if I remember.
It's probably our fault. We've been talking about this kid.
Then,
we've been talking about him since the 9th grade.
That's the problem is like if you start out real high, you have nowhere to go but down.
Yeah, that's
once he started going down, it becomes so easy to keep devaluing them.
Yeah.
And I'll say this though. I mean, again, I'm just being honest.
You saw him play basketball, didn't you?
I did, but he didn't really play. I just saw him out there.
Saw him in his jersey.
Yeah. But I'll say this: like he wasn't great in the All-Star games. Apparently.
Yeah. I think some of it's weight, and I think, and not so much he's 400 pounds or sloppy big or anything like that. It's just that so many of these kids are huge, and for lack of a better term, it's a terrible term. I bet they don't even use it in the real weight room. Baby fat. He's just naturally a heavy kid, as anybody that would be 300 pounds. Like my buddy Tim Watts used to tell me all the time. He'd go like, how hard you have to work to be 300 pounds? In middle school and high school, it takes a lot of work to get to 300 pounds or in middle school and high school. And it's not really talking about the weight room. These are just naturally huge kids. And at Alabama, what David Ballew's got to do is convert that into NFL muscle and strength and power and all this. So that's what I mean. It takes a minute. Not every kid shows up looking like Sewell, Penei Sewell. They don't just show up looking like that, except, one in 1,000 kids do. So it's going to take a minute, but I'm super high on Debose. I think he'll be a multi-year starter.
I hope you're right. And again, it's one of those things, you hope he sticks around long enough. I mean, we shouldn't even have to add that caveat anymore. It should just be known, Hope he sticks around.
I know, because that's the most frustrating part, right? You try to develop him over 2 or 3 years, and he's ready to play, and he's like, "Okay, I'm leaving."
Well, the frustrating part is you and I are trying to do these rankings and do these, projections and assuming, okay, well, if he stays, and then we go, oh, well, he could leave tomorrow.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very difficult to project. It's like having all this volatility in the market. It just sort of.
How about this bold prediction, though? I think the House settlement, once the House settlement becomes law, and we have sort of a new system that's sort of coming, I think there'll be less transferring. I do. It won't be radical. There'll still be quite a bit, assuming that rule doesn't change much. But I think there'll be less transferring in the future.
All right. That's good. Oh, no, it's not going to do it. I had one more thing to say. I wanted to talk about softball. Softball is hosting a regional. Congratulations to them. The bad news, if they win, the super regional they go to is in Oklahoma.
That's tough. That's a tough draw.
We played Oklahoma.
We played Oklahoma in Tuscaloosa and won 2 of the 3 games and nearly won all 3. And Oklahoma's going to be frothing at the mouth, to make up for that. So it's not only the tough draw for those that unaware that don't pay attention to softball. We understand if you don't, but if you don't, Oklahoma has won the national championship 4 years in a row. I mean, this is the 4-time defending national champs. We're going to have to go on the road and beat them in their place 2 out of 3 games to get to the World Series. That's a tough draw, but heck, it's tough just to get there, and you got to win a regional, which includes playing Virginia Tech, who is a really good team. Belmont's also in our regional, has an outstanding pitcher, and we know that's a great equalizer when it comes to softball. But Virginia Tech is a really good team. Alabama has, ironically, already played them twice, run ruled them once, but lost the other game to them. So Virginia Tech's very good, and that's who Alabama's ultimately going to have to beat to make it to a super regional and be literally one of the last 16 teams standing.
Yeah, and look, I just don't have any delusions of grandeur. I feel like if we can get to the super regional, play Oklahoma, and then, let the cards fall where they may, but if we can put up a good fight, I'll be proud of this squad.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there would be no shame. I mean, I think if there's criticism, it's why'd you put yourself in a position to where you were seeded in a way where you had to beat Oklahoma? Okay, that's fair-ish criticism. But, Alabama is now hosted. That means they've been a national seed 20 years in a row.
Yeah.
20 years in a row. Only Tennessee can match that. It's only Alabama and Tennessee. The absolute remarkable consistency of being very good. I know some get frustrated because they're not super elite all the time. That's just happened some of the time. But being very good every single year is one hell of an accaccomplishment.
It's awesome.
No one else is doing it. For those that think, there's nothing to that. No one else does it but Tennessee.
Hey, now that Saban's gone and we were out of the playoffs last year and we hadn't won a championship, and now softball hadn't won a title since 2012. But I would say softball is the most consistent program on campus.
No question that's true. No question that's true.
And I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I love it, like I love football. But at the same time, I'm going to say that should be applauded. And for the people that are killing Pat Murphy, cut him some slack, bro. 4
of the last 5 College World Series. They've made it to the College World Series. 4 of the people say, well, they haven't been good since 2012. They've been to the College World Series 4 of the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and he should be praised. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.